Hello, everybody. This is Miss Jen on The Experience, and we have a really exciting guest today. Super excited. All right, this is Karla Nappi. And is there another accent on it? Is it Nappi or Nappy?
Yeah, just Nappy.
And I've been hearing buzz from Second Sight for a long time about this book that's going to be coming out on Wednesday. But it's so cool. I looked at all your other bio stuff and I was like, oh my gosh, I did not know. I can't wait to talk about this. So Karla, tell everybody just kind of like just a brief background. We're going to talk about it for a long time, but just a brief background of how you ended up in comic books.
So I started going to conventions when I was in Los Angeles, and that's when I started to fall in love with the medium of comic books. And I had a friend that was working for Clive Barker and Mark Allen Miller, and he was doing comic books. So that was like one of the first comic books I read. And then I decided to take a comic book writing class at Meltdown. And then from there, it was just like, this is what I need to be doing for the rest of my life.
So Meltdown Comics, did you like see the advertisement for their writing thing on like their website or something? You wander in and hear about it?
No, I had been looking online for classes and I had found one that was just purely online, but at the time I knew I was not a good online learner. I did better with in-person stuff. So like if it had happened this past year, I'd be screwed. But Jim Higgins was doing the class at Meltdown Comics. And so I started to take the class with him, and I met a bunch of other comic creators that I'm still friends with today that we all share our material with.
Oh, that's perfect. I just want to take just 1 second to remind everybody that's going to be coming to watch this awesome interview that is a fully interactive interview. So if you have questions at any time, you can totally throw them up in the chat and I will actually make sure that they get answered for you. So that's way cool. It's way different than an interview. Usually you just have to watch it and think to yourself, oh, I hope they ask my question. What's happening? So it's kind of like a marriage of like a traditional interview and like having the open mic at Comic-Con.
Nice.
So I see that you've been had a long, wonderful history in TV writing. Was that where you started in your writing career?
Yeah, so I went to NYU's film and TV school, and then I worked in New York for a little bit. I've lived in LA 2 different times, worked there in a million different TV shows on both coasts, actually, like Rescue Me and Good Wife, things like that. The last show I did was Sirens. And then I got a chance to write on Suits. I did an episode and a webisode of Suits. So fun fact, I actually have met Meghan Markle. And then, yeah, I kind of segued into comics from there because Duplicant was adapted from a pilot script that I wrote back in like 2013.
So when you write a pilot treatment, is it usual in Hollywood to have written a treatment for a pilot and shop that around? Or is it more likely that you're going to get hired to write a treatment for a pilot?
It depends on your level of experience. So someone at my stage, I needed to have an actual script in order to be able to have that not only as a sample for staffing, because it used to be, back like when I was still at NYU, you had to have samples of actual shows called spec scripts. So back when I thought I was going to be a comedy writer, I had a spec script of Spin City because that was my internship in college, was working with Michael J. Fox on Spin City. It was actually the last season he was on the show before the show moved to LA. And then it changed by the time I had gotten into film and TV in New York again, and you had to do original pilot scripts. So it was beautiful. The script was for both trying to pitch and sell, but also as a sample to try to help me get staffed.
So I have so many questions about how it works to work in TV or in Hollywood for like writing movies and things. Are you always like a contract person where you are an independent writer and then people pick you up for projects, or do you work for studios themselves?
So for me, I've only had the one professional writing credit on Suits, and that came because I was their script coordinator. So I had worked as the script coordinator on the pilot in Manhattan, and I hit it off with Aaron. And then when the show got picked up to series, he offered to have me work on the show in LA, and that's what moved me to LA the second time. And so I lived in LA for about almost a decade. And he gave me a chance to write. And then after that, it was mainly script coordinator jobs and trying to break in as a writer, but I never actually made it to staff writer before I segued into comics.
Is it really is it like the ultimate thing that you want to do is to be on staff, or is it more fun to be free agent and kind of go to whatever studio you want?
Well, it's such an interesting thing with because my grandfather worked in a union his whole life as an electrician. And so, in that type of world, you go to your union hall and you're like, I'm available for work, and there's a list of jobs. But in film and TV, even though there's a union for the writers, it's not the same thing. You don't go to the union hall and you get a list of jobs. It's like you have to be part of the union in order to work for these film and TV shows. But you have to get a chance to write in order to get into the union. So you have to have so many credits in order to even get into the union. So you need people to be willing to hire you as either a freelance writer for a single episode, or just give you a chance and hire you as a staff writer. It's incredibly complicated. You have to go on all these meetings. The studio has to want to hire you. The network has to want to hire you. The showrunner has to want to hire you. And they're getting inundated with recommendations from every agency in town and all their friends. And I think that's why you see a lot of shows end up hiring people that they already know, because it's just easier, unfortunately, that way, which doesn't always lead to the best diversity in the rooms that I know is a huge thing that's they're trying to change that right now with the Pay Up Hollywood movement, trying to make sure that there's more diversity, not only in the staffing of the writers, but also in the staffing of the support staff, so that those people hopefully get moved up into the writer position.
Oh, yeah. So it does sound like being a writer is just as difficult as being an artist, like an actor, because I've heard that also, that you have to have so many speaking parts before you get considered to get your SAG card. And everyone, that's their whole goal.
Yeah. And what you have to do with what I've seen from when I've worked on set is you have to be really good friends with the second AD and the first AD, because they're usually the ones that are going to throw you in for those quick one-line roles, and just having that one line is what helps you build up those credits to get to it. And each coast is different for the Writers Guild, as far as if I had done that one episode of Suits in New York, I would have been a full member of the Writers Guild. But in LA, the Writers Guild required more than that one episode. So I was brought in as an associate level member, which got me the health benefits for a full year. But then after that, I wasn't a full member. That level of membership only lasts for 3 years, and then you're out.
Goodness gracious. So I know that most everything is who you know. It's in every industry.
Yes. Yes.
For script writing, is it for that person? Who do they get chosen by? Is that director? Is that the person that chooses who the writers are? Is there some other level that chooses?
Well, in film, my understanding is it's the studio that's going to be hiring you for those jobs. And then usually the director is brought in after the fact, unless the director already owns a property that he's looking to bring to the studio himself, then that's a whole other ball of wax. But when it comes to TV, it's the showrunner. So the showrunner is not always, typically the creator of the show. So the showrunner is either the creator of the show, or if the creator of the show were someone like me, they would bring on an experienced showrunner to partner with me. And then that person is the one that makes the staffing decisions, but usually in conjunction with the studio and the network. It depends on how much leeway those two entities are going to give this person in their hiring choices. Because, they're the ones spending the money on it.
Is there, do people specialize in things? Because I know I have a friend that he ends up doing amount to script editing all the time.
Yes.
He doesn't write the original script, but he gets handed scripts all the time to do the fixing of things, like when things don't make sense in storyline, he has to figure out a way to make it work. The people, they specialize just in like modification of scripts and not the original writing of them.
I would say that's more common in features, not so much in television. In television, you'll be more specific to like a specific genre that you write. Like you do comedy, or you do medical dramas, or you do law shows. But sometimes you can do all of those. It just depends on how willing people are to accept that you can do those different types of mediums.
Now, what used to be called Duplicate, when it used to be a pilot, now it's called Duplicate. It feels very much that sci-fi married with a little bit of medical things. Or do you have a background in any of those?
Well, sci-fi is just what I've always loved growing up, watching and reading and all that. And then medical, I guess, was probably just an influence of like my own crazy medical history. I've had like a bunch of weird medical stuff over the years, and dealing with insurance and not having insurance and things like that. And then, I think I mentioned this on other podcasts, like the AIDS epidemic. I grew up with that when I was a kid, and that was like a huge part of I felt like it was just a huge part of our daily lives, like, Ryan White, and trying to make sure that people knew not to be afraid of someone who had AIDS and to treat them as you would anyone else.
Absolutely. All right. You have a really cool creative team. So Mariana Streskowska, hopefully I'm not messing that up. Josh Reed, Carlos Mangual, Leila DeLuca, and Owen Gianni. Hoping I'm messing up anyone's name. If I have, totally just like shoot and be like, dummy. But there are some really talented people in this group. How did you guys get together? How was the mesh happening?
Oh, well, and don't forget Vince Hernandez. So he was
so sorry.
He was my editor on the first issue. So Mariana came to me by way of Ryland Grant. He was one of the writers that I met at Meltdown Comics, and he knew this guy who had these connections with overseas artists. And so he introduced me to Mariana. I think she was like recently graduated from art school or not that far away from it when we met up. And then Josh came to me by way of Vince. Vince I like ambushed after a panel at Long Beach Comic Con. And I didn't even like have anything at that point other than the script for Duplicant for the first issue. And so he was nice enough to like read the script, and he really helped me with, making sure that the script was in as good a shape as it could be, and helped me with like learning how to communicate with an artist. And he's the one that hooked me up with Josh, because Josh used to do all the lettering for Aspen, and Josh also did my logo, the Duplicant logo. And then Josh got hired at DC, so he hooked me up with Carlos, who's taken over the lettering since then. Layla and Owen came to me by way of my friend Himkar. Himkar did Boy One, and then which was a comic book a couple of years ago from, I want to say, IDW, and he has a new book coming out in May, I think, called Redshift from Scout. And so Layla had a cover for him for Boy One, and so he hooked me up with Layla, and Layla came on board and has done all of our covers.
We're huge Scout people here, so with bated breath for Redshift. All I have is the Ash Cannon. That's just a huge tease.
Himkar's amazing. I met Himkar, a friend of mine that I worked with had passed away, and his mom had made this nonprofit in his name that I had helped with. And so Himkar was one of the award winners of this grant we did in my friend's name for filmmakers. So Himkar and I have just kind of kept in touch ever since. And he as well had veered into comics, which was another kind of inspiration for me to veer into comics, because I had seen one of my friends already do that previously.
Mm-hmm. So I heard about Duplicant, I think, from Spike Durrell. I think he started talking to me about it in generalities maybe 6 months ago during the middle of COVID. I think in hopes of getting, like to get to have a variant cover or something, which I would have loved to have done, but I became overwhelmed with other things, and it's on me. I dropped the ball. But how I love the storyline so much. How much changed or didn't change from what you had written for the pilot, and what ended up on the page that we're going to see on Wednesday?
The pilot is actually so radically different from what I ended up putting down that my agent no longer uses it as a writing sample for me because they just don't match up anymore. Matt became like a much more involved, active character. Pamela in the pilot script was literally a one scene character. That was it. So she's become a much bigger part of the story. You know, she continues on in all of the issues in some way, shape, or form. So it's like, and the backstories, I delve way more into the backstories of all my characters. So having the comic books kind of freed me up to do more character work, which is what I feel like is one of my strong points, is being able to do character work.
Yeah, I've kind of noticed that. We've seen this as comic book readers over the years. There's for example, what we got with Robert Kirkman's Walking Dead comics and what ended up on the screen. There were a lot of characters that had much bigger roles or less roles or didn't exist in the comic books that showed up that are like the most popular characters on the show. So I think that you're right, that there's like some character development that you can't do one way. It's hard to hear in people's heads, for example, when you're on the screen, unless you're doing a lot of narration, which is also but in comic books, you can do that, just like in novels, where you can get really deep into the psyche of, you know, what their motivation is, what they're doing, what they're thinking, and why they're doing what they're doing. It's a big difference, and that's why I love comics so much.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's been awesome just to be able to have something I wrote come to life, because, you know, in film and TV, a lot of times you're just writing into the void, and it never sees the light of day except for like whatever executives are bothering to read it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it makes you a little bit crazy as a writer to see, like you write things for them to use, and there's so much, even as actors, I see that it ends up on the cutting room floor, and you think it's your best work, but no one ever sees them.
No one ever sees it, yeah, because it's like editing is just a whole other animal, and you know what you've written to what's filmed to what's like edited is totally different. It's just an interesting way, like how something would work in a comic book doesn't work in a film, because it just, the audience has a different way of viewing and expectations and everything.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about Duplicant now, because we've talked kind of around it, but now we're going to talk more specifics. Tell everybody kind of what the general storyline is.
So it's set in the future during a pandemic of organ failure, and it starts out on Pamela, who's a paralegal studying to take her, oh my gosh, sorry, having a tongue tie moment. So she's studying to become an attorney when she gets sick with the organ failure pandemic, and she needs to have a new set of lungs created for her, because in this world, we don't use human organs, we use these printed organs for you, but they're so expensive you can't afford them. So then you end up going into indentured servitude and working and doing things you never expected to do in your life. And also Pamela, because this isn't the life she wants, she seeks out the scientist who created them, Matt Travers, and that's when he starts to take a bigger part in the series, because he's the one that created these organs and only wanted them to do harm, to do good for the world, and is upset at the way they've been kind of twisted into this thing that he never wanted it to be.
Yeah, I love when these kind of things are addressed, because it feels like it's something that will have to be addressed in the future. Like it's real. It will happen in the future.
It will happen, yeah.
Look at how it might go down.
Yeah.
It's like, what is there? There's a movie that kind of talks about organs. What is it, like Repo Man or something, where?
Yeah, Repo Man, which I haven't sreally, but Repo the Genetic Opera was kind of an influence for me when I wrote this series, along with Minority Report.
Yeah, I love things that have such close ties to the reality that you think, it's like watching The Expanse, for example. We know that's like pretty far future, but everything that they've written in that whole series, I feel like none of it is like pie in the sky. We're throwing out, I think they use science, and I think that's really how society is going to behave. It's crazy.
Well, and it was just kind of obviously surreal that like this is coming out while we're in an actual pandemic, because it was written and conceived years and years before the pandemic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you'd have to have like a time machine in 2016 to come forward and try to figure out.
Exactly.
I'm very glad we don't have a bunch of organ failure, because otherwise it'll feel like you were a prophetic.
Well, sometimes it feels like it is, because like I know people have been having issues with their lungs and their hearts and their kidneys with COVID. So I was like,
Jonathan Hedrick, who did a really cool book with Scout called Recount.
yeah.
It came out right during the election, and then all the problems that happened afterwards. And the first couple of issues that he put out as they released, like the days they released, seemed to be exactly what was going on.
That's awesome. That's good storytelling.
Really diverged, because now they're really diverse. They're not anything like
Right.
I used to tease them. I'm like, going, huh? Is there anything you want to tell me? Your TARDIS.
You've got like everything wiretapped.
That's right. How long is Duplicant? It's kind of slated for. How many issues?
So the first story arc is 5 issues. So I'm just actually finishing up issue 4 now. I got the next lettering passed in my inbox from Carlos to look at. And then issue 5 is going to Mariana to draw as soon as I can get it to her. And so I think that comes out in January, the 5th issue. And then I'm probably going to take a short break and then sketch out the next 4 to 5 issues, and that'll be the whole thing.
So you've got two story arcs in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. I'm excited to read those. So I see also that you're pitching a cool animated Supernatural.
Yeah.
I didn't know about this.
Yeah, so Sapphire Sandello, I met her through Mark Allen Miller. She was looking for someone to collaborate with on bringing her vision to life. We're actually writing the pilot script now. We had a bunch of places we pitched to that wanted to see more than just the pitch. They wanted to see the actual script itself. So that's what we're working on now. But it's been really fun to write. She's been great to work with. It's set in the Philippines. It deals with the Philippine folklore and everything. And this is stuff that actually happens in the Philippines. Sapphire is a paranormal expert. So it's just interesting to explore something that I don't feel like has really been shown on television before. Mm-hmm. And she's an animator, so that's why she wants to have this be animated, because this is sort of like a semi-autobiographical story for her.
Has she said what kind of style she wants to lean toward for animation?
Are those cards?
Yes. Shoot, I'm forgetting what exactly it's called. It mimics what the artwork looks like. If you're looking at my website, there's some pictures from it. So she wants it to mimic that type of style. Not 3. I don't think she said 3D. I think she said 2D, but I'd have to double check.
That one sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, it's great. It's got a curse. It's got, a woman coming into her powers. It's awesome.
Are there any other cool projects you have worked on or are working on now?
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw the Visible Women hashtag a couple of weeks ago that was going around that had the added unseen hashtag to it. So Kelly Sue DeConnick is working with this group called Brink Literacy. They do a quarterly anthology called Friction. And I wrote a story that's going to be featured in that unseen issue. And we're going to pick someone from the Visible Women hashtag to illustrate it for me.
So speak to the visible, invisible part of those hashtags. What are we hoping to bring to light?
So my understanding from what the hashtag is meant to do is it's not going to be just focused on women. So it's basically meant to be, because they wanted to make it open to everyone who's basically not getting enough recognition in the comic industry. So women, people of color, non-binary, all of that is supposed to be all within this, what was originally like a Visible Women hashtag. I think Kelly Sue came up with Visible Women like a couple of years ago. So it's clearly morphed over time to try to be more inclusive. So you have to add a bunch more hashtags to it. But the purpose is to help people who are trying to break in and having trouble breaking in, giving them this opportunity, which is a paid opportunity to have their work actually printed in addition to getting paid work, and to put them in front of other professional comic book creators who can see their work and be like, well, maybe I'll hire them on my next project.
Is the project coming out from a specific publisher, or is it being self-published through Kickstarting?
So Brink Literacy is who the publisher is, and they're a nonprofit, and so Friction is their quarterly anthology that they put out 4 times a year. I do believe they fund their publication through Kickstarter, but they already funded for this year, like earlier in the summer.
I love it when I see people making effort to, like, it's one thing to talk about issues, right, that we want to, they're near and dear to us, and then to be able to figure out a way to actually help. This is as simple as, supporting that project by purchasing, and then when you like the people's work that's in it.
Well, and I hired a Visible Woman colorist to do the color work on the cover, the exclusive cover that Lost in Comics did with Carl Mostert. So, because when we saw I was like, oh, why don't we get this colored? And then I was like, let me see if I can find someone off this hashtag, and that's how we found Amanda, who did the color work on that.
So a little bit that I like to talk about on the experiences, because we're all kind of like nerds of all different types.
Right.
And we connect with each other as figuring out what each other's nerddoms are. So do you have any hidden nerddoms?
Any hidden nerddoms? That's a good question. I mean, I love British detective series. Is that kind of nerdy?
Perfect.
Yeah. I love British, and not just like the TV ones. Like, I'm reading this British detective series called Maisie Dobbs that I love. It's just fun to read it.
Like a novel?
Yeah, it's a novel series about this woman who's a detective during the period right before and during World War II.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have any other hidden talents?
Hidden talents. I'm not the best artist in the world. Although artistry runs in my family, my great uncle was Rudy Nappi, who did the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boy covers. And yeah.
So grew up obsessed with those books.
Yeah, so it's like yeah, I actually have 2 of them right here. Like, these are 2 of his camera. There you go.
That is crazy. I have one of those right here somewhere.
Yeah. So, and these were based on one of his daughters, the picture of her, and then the Hardy Boys were based on like cousins, the images, and then he also did all these Pulp Fiction covers for like years and years and years and years. And David Avalone, who writes for Dynamite and wrote with Kevin Eastman, his dad actually had a couple of covers that were done by my uncle for him.
Okay, so here's a weird question. So I've always wondered this kind of stuff. Like, I just have wrapped my mind. I've been in the comic book industry for a really long time, and I didn't know until fairly recently who owns the physical art when it gets done for comic book pages.
Right.
Because I only saw it at conventions, at people's booths, and I didn't know who owned it. So for like art for covers of books like that, did your uncle get to keep the art and that was his and he still has some of it, or did that go with the publishers of the book? Or
that's a good question. I actually don't know. I believe it went to the publisher, because we've had people ask us since he passed away, like, where those pieces are. And I have artwork by him in my house, like original pieces, but they're not covers. They're other landscapes or, still lives that he did. My understanding is that there's very few of them left. I don't know if they got tossed. I don't know if the publisher just didn't keep them. They just don't seem to exist, which is kind of a shame.
You know what I bet? I bet you they're stashed in someone's warehouse or their offices, and they'll just come to light someday. They're like, oh, what is this giant pile of really cool things?
The Raiders of the Lost Ark theory.
It's true. One of the boxes will start lighting up.
Yeah.
In this case, it'll start ticking like an old clock.
There you go.
Did you, as a young person, read them and know the connection?
I did know the connection from a very early age, but I've actually, funnily enough, I've never read a Nancy Drew book. I don't know. I guess it was just never my thing. Like, I keep thinking, like, I should just try to read it, but then I'll try and I just can't get into it, which is kind of a shame.
It's just funny that you like British mystery shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I also mystery, but I just couldn't. I don't know. Maybe by the time I like was introduced to it, it was just outside of my wheelhouse at that point.
Maybe I've recently decided, and it's such a weird, bizarre thing as a full adult to realize that YA novels are awesome.
Oh, yeah.
I think I figured out because like when adults write books, they put like adult problems in them. And I remember those. And so when you read YA, it's all like silly problems like that boy likes me.
Well, yeah, like I loved Harry Potter and I loved Hunger Games. I mean, not that Hunger Games is super light reading, but yeah, those were great novels, and that's totally YA.
Yeah, like I'm currently reading The Ranger's Apprentice, which I think is aimed at 8-year-old boys, but
that's all right.
Do you collect anything? Do you like have a toy collection or comic collection or rock collection or any of those kinds of fun things?
Yeah, I have a pretty big comic collection. At this point, it's mainly filled with Kickstarter books. But I'm trying to collect like all the trade paperbacks of Fables, because that was like the first big series I really got addicted to. And, I just haven't had as much time to read as I would like since, I've got a little guy that keeps me busy most of the time. You can probably hear him in the background every so often.
What? How old?
He's 3.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy every second of it. I know it seems like there'll be days when you're like, I cannot wait to get to the next phase, but 1 and 18 now, and they're delightful human beings, but I miss those little young days when, they would wander in from another room and have like chalky looking all over their face, and I'd be like, "Hey, sweet boy, what have you been into?" Mama's candy, and it was like I got like tummy medicine, the Tums.
Oh no!
I was pregnant with the next one,
Oh no!
They had to call the poison control. I'm like, is it bad if my child just ate like a fistful of Tums? And they're like, no.
Awesome.
Is there anything really funny that they've done like that yet?
Yeah, well, I think he does a lot of really funny things. Like I told him once that like his father had like butt cheese as a joke, and so he decided to use Legos to recreate butt cheese. My husband was not happy with that, but I thought it was really funny.
I ended up ordering.
Just wait. I don't know. I don't know if we'll actually end up reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid, but my kids for the longest time would give each other the cheese touch, which
cheese touch.
It's a dumb thing. There's like an old piece of cheese on the ground, and they dare each other to touch the cheese. And then if that person touches another person, they have the cheese touch because
that sounds like cooties.
And we play it as adults still. Like
okay.
One of our friends has the cheese touch right now, and they've forgotten about it, so we feel like we're pretty safe. But if you cross your fingers, they can't give it to you.
That just I don't know why that reminded me, but I used to go to the Rocky Horror Picture Show every night in high school for like years and years and years and years and years. I had my 13th birthday party at Rocky Horror.
Did you always play the same part, or did you just?
No, I didn't play any part. I was just in the audience. I knew all the moves to everything, and I got away with them not popping my cherry for like years until they realized that I had snuck by without having that done, and then forget it. Because I had gotten away with it for so long.
I just figured that everyone chose a character that they wanted to like. Whenever that part came up, they were going to do those lines.
No, because they had the theater I went to. They had the same people doing the parts all the time, so it was like I was just one of the regular audience members that came all the time that they expected to be there.
So much fun. I miss getting to do those kinds of things. Are there when everything normalizes again, what's the one thing that you crave to go do so much?
I would love to go back to Disneyland. I really enjoy going there, probably without my son because it's a whole different experience. But yeah, if I could just spend the day at Disneyland enjoying the rides and stuffing myself with candy, then I'd be a happy camper.
Oh yeah. So how did you hook up with Second Sight as a publisher?
So they had an article. There was an article that Bleeding Cool did about them, and I saw it, and I emailed them, and then Spike messaged me probably like 15 minutes later, and next thing I know, I'm talking to Marcus, I'm talking to Bradley, and they're like, "We wrote the book," And it just kind of went on from there. It was pretty quick. It was awesome.
What I love about all three of those guys is that they are really on fire for what they're doing. They're so excited all the time about what's next, especially Michael just messaged me in the middle of a day and just say, "Hey, sister." Hey, sister. I know what he wants.
Right.
Talk about how many books you want to have.
Right.
I always feel bad when I just leave it be because I'm like, well, I can't do that right now.
Yeah, you're like, no, not right now. You're like, I'll get to you later.
It's like, I know it's FOC. I'm going to order a bunch of your books. Stop it. Oh, goodness. I'm trying to think what other cool things we can talk about. What do you suggest for somebody that's interested in getting into writing, specifically for, we'll talk about both different things, but for, they're interested in writing for TV, what's the thing that they need that's most important for them to do?
Well, they need to be confident in their own writing style. That's a huge thing. You need to know what your specific voices and your specific skills are. And the more scripts you can get your hands on to read, especially if you're in Los Angeles, I don't know if the Writers Guild Library is open right now with the COVID restrictions, but it's usually free to the public and it has scripts from everything in it. That was one of the things I used to do as a script coordinator, was provide them with the scripts from the shows I worked on for people to study. And then just watching the shows you like, if you don't have access to the scripts, then breaking down the shows you like to see how they do, what their beats are to get there, their act breaks, all that stuff. Like, there's so much to do to study and to get there, and then just continue to write. The more you write, the more you'll be confident about your own voice and your own style, and the more you'll have product to show, because you don't want to finally get a chance to have someone read your work and only have one thing to show them, because if they really like what you have, you need to have multiple samples and multiple strong samples.
So I never thought of that, because usually whenever I ask that advice of people that do costume work or anything else in the industry, they're always like, just do it, do art, do it over and over and over again. And this is the first time I've ever thought about, instead of just doing a bunch of writing, to go and seek out other successful writing and to study it like you would study anything else. That's very insightful.
Yeah, because that was one of the advantages of being a script coordinator. I get everything that the writers create. I get the outlines, I get the story beat sheets, I get the writing room notes, I get the scripts. My whole job is to read all that stuff all day, every day when I was a script coordinator. So that was just a great training ground.
And then how about for people that are interested in writing for comic books? Was there anything you learned in getting into being able to do that?
It's funny because I think my background in film and TV really helped me be able to write comics, because it's such a visual field as it is anyway. So to be able to, sort of edit your comic book when you're doing these panels, I think is coming from my background in film and TV and from editing, because I actually initially thought I was going to be an editor for film and TV. And then I was never going to try to write comics until I could take a class, because in film and TV, there's this very specific structure you tend to follow. And in comics, I had no idea what that looked like or how it worked. So what I did was I was going to the conventions, and I was going to all the classes that told you about what the colorist does, what the line work artist does, what the letterer does, the editor, so I really understood the mechanics of how the comic books were made. And then the writing classes I took at Meltdown also helped me further hone how to actually put this to script. And then having my writing group that I show everything to just also helps me be able to make sure that I'm doing the best work that I can do as a comic. So having a group, which goes for film and TV too, you always want to have a trusted group of people you can show your stuff to get commentary from.
Oh, absolutely. Is there anybody in either industry that you just crave to work with that you haven't got to yet?
That's a good question. I've worked with a lot of really big powerhouses in film and TV as a script coordinator, not necessarily as a writer, but I don't know if I would love to just continue to work with Sapphire. She's been so awesome. If we can get our show picked up and made and on the air, that would just be amazing. Because animation to me is kind of like another segue with comics, because you know, it's all going to be storyboarded and brought to life by art.
Yeah, they kind of feel like good like brothers for ways to visualize things. I think recently they announced that the new book by Boom Berserker that Keanu Reeves helped, like he did co-writing on, that's part of what they're going to do for development. They're going to do a movie, and then they're going to do an animated show that's manga based, which is kind of, I like it that they're kind of taking it that way.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It makes sense. I mean, it seems like a lot of comic book writers also do animation writing, from what I've seen. Because you have to, when you're writing animation, you can't write it like you would like a live action show. It's more action based, so you have to be more aware of not having the characters just like gabbing to each other. They have to actively be doing something on screen.
Oh, I don't know. I'd be down for watching animated shows where people just
sit and talk.
You know, for movies, why not? As long as we're talking about something interesting.
True.
So how far along are you guys in? So you're just in the pitch stage for the animated series. Is that correct?
Yeah, so our pitch document is totally done. So we have like all 8 episodes of the first season worked out, and then we have season 2 and season 3. We have like a rough overview of what would happen, and now we're writing the actual pilot script for the first episode.
It's amazing, so amazing. Then how do you shop it?
So Sapphire has a lot of connections already in animation because she worked in animation, and then my agent just kind of helps do the legwork behind the scenes to set it up. Now that we were pitching it last summer, so we had a couple of people that were interested in reading the pilot script. So it's just been a matter of getting our schedules to align, because she's in Los Angeles and I'm here on the East Coast, to get to finish the script. And then once we have the script finished, then we'll start sending that out.
That's wonderful. I also hear a lot from people that they find themselves getting answers like there's already a lot of things are in development that are similar, which is kind of an interesting thing that we've seen in Hollywood for a long time. It feels like there's a little bit of I don't want to call it groupthink because that doesn't make any sense, but that like you'll see a bunch of Westerns all be launched at the same time. It almost feels like
right.
Did someone just like hear something and they're like, yeah, we haven't had a Western in a while?
Well, sometimes it's just a crazy coincidence that there's a bunch of that at the same time. And then sometimes it's deliberate. Like one studio will get wind of another studio doing something and they'll be like, we want to do our own version of that. And then that's usually when they like try to source out to a writing team that they like or a writer that they like to, you know, bring their own vision of that up.
See, to me, that's kind of ridiculous. If you know something else is in development like that, then I would think you just like, let's not waste our resources on something that there's already another thing like it.
Right. Well, you never know. Your version might be better than the one that's being made, I think is always the thinking.
Yeah, maybe they're like, we'll do it faster. We'll be like,
no, that too. It's always conceivable they'll do it faster, but faster doesn't always mean better.
It does not. Oh my goodness. Let's. What is your very favorite collectible that you own? What is the thing you like put on a high shelf so that 3-year-old young you can't get to it?
A lot of my collectibles are still in boxes actually, because we're still not totally unpacked from moving. So a lot of my which would be my comic books really. Like I don't want Wyatt, you know, because he's not the most gentle with his books. He's like, let me rip this cover off of this book and let me bend the spine all the way back. And I'm like, no. But that's what kids do with their books. They're rough with their books.
Did you say Wyatt?
Wyatt, yeah.
That's a darling name.
Yeah. He's insistent that he's the only Wyatt in existence. He's at that age where he just can't wrap his head around the fact that there might be other people with that name.
I'm sure you haven't let him watch Tombstone yet, because, you know.
Although my husband did try to show him Ghostbusters.
It's so funny. It's hard to know when to do those things because you want so desperately to share things like that so they understand what you talk about. I can remember when I finally got to show my sons the movie Aliens, because my husband and I quote stuff from that movie all the time in every
movie.
Just like we quote it, and we're like, if we ever say something, young children of ours, that you don't understand at all, it doesn't make sense in context, we're quoting a movie. Right. Have you had to make up some kind of language that Wyatt doesn't understand so you can like talk to your spouse about what you want to get done? Like,
well, sometimes we just like spell things out, but then a lot of the times, anytime we try to talk, he loses his mind. He doesn't like that I do anything to take care of myself. I'm not allowed to eat. I'm not allowed to go to the bathroom. I'm not allowed to shower. I'm not allowed to sleep. And he has this litany that he runs down, like all those things. And so he gets really upset when I'm like actually taking care of myself.
Oh my gosh, that's so ridiculous. Kids are they're the best. All right, Karla. So share. We've got your social media up here. If people want to follow you and know everything that's going on and all the exciting things that are coming up, is that the best place? Instagram tag there, or are there other places that you have?
So that's also the same for my Twitter account, and then my website. I try to keep it as updated as possible. It's karlanappi.com. And so that's another place where like I have all the information on all the various projects that I'm doing, except for the Unseen one. That's not up there quite yet. But like that has the information on The Hotel, which was a short comic I did for Nightmare Theater Anthology. And it's got some imagery and the log line for Nabarang on it, which is the animated series. And then it's got like all the other sort of original pilot scripts I've written, all the log lines for them.
That's awesome. Everyone make sure that you go and you follow Karla so that you can make sure to know everything that's coming out and when it's going to come out. Do not miss the chance to own your copy of Duplicant. Put it on your pull box at your comic shop. You can use Comic Shop Locator to find one near you if you're unsure about where to go, and have it reserved for you. Because don't hesitate, because it's this Wednesday. It's not like you got weeks to try to figure out when to do it. Make sure you get it on there now, because I have a feeling, just guessing, that it's going to be one of those hot ones that people may be like, oh, wait, that was coming. No, add now. And then all of a sudden, all the copies are gone.
Fingers crossed. Yeah, I'm hoping in the summer I can do like a signing, but there's too many restrictions here, and I'm not vaccinated yet anyway, because I'm not allowed. Tomorrow, I think my state like finally opened it up where I can get vaccinated starting tomorrow. So,
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah,
yeah. My oldest son, who's 21, he knows that I have a little bit of like anxiety about doing it, and he has anxiety about driving cars. So he
yeah,
he goes, Mom, I'll make the appointment. If you drive me, I'll go with you and hold your hand.
Oh, that's nice. That's very nice.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. It's like we've talked about everything. And it's pretty good.
Awesome.
Where's going to be your first vacation, do you think?
Well, we went to Hershey for Christmas last year. Yeah, we stayed at a rental house, and we did the theme park because it was all outside and they require masks. So we felt like it was about as safe as you can get these days. And Wyatt, of course, loved it. He was like on all the rides. He was like, can I go on the really big roller coasters, which are not running in the winter, but he's too tiny for anyway. I was just like, we've got a daredevil on our hands.
And he's like brave about it.
He's totally brave about it. Like any of the big, the kiddie rides that were like the version of the adult rides, he was like, again. And because it wasn't crowded, because normally at Hershey Park at Christmas, forget it, it's like crazy land. But because it was so empty, he could go on some of these rides like again and again and again.
I think at some point we're going to be like, we really want this all to be over, but then we'll kind of think to ourselves, you know what? It was easier to get a seat at a restaurant.
It was like I went to get I had to get shoes the other day. I went to an REI, and normally you're just like standing there forever hoping someone's gonna take pity on you and help you out. And they had a virtual check-in line, so I stood outside until they called me in for my turn, and then you get helped by someone who's just helping you so that they can get in and out as quickly as possible. Like, this is great. They need to keep doing this.
You might be spoiled enough to be like, you know what? We're okay waiting in our car for our turn.
Pretty much. I was like, I'll just wait outside. This is awesome. Get some fresh air. Don't have to worry about being inside.
Exactly. All right. It's one of those things, like, we've just started doing special kind of cool commercials, like full animated versions of comic book pushes, which I've really enjoyed. Like, people make motion comics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Sam, Macroverse, right? Or Macro, whatever it is, Macro Media or something.
Yeah, or just like, our comic is coming out next week, and we're going to make one that looks like a little mini movie, so you can be excited about it.
Yeah, my friend Jesselyn did that trailer that I sent you guys, which was awesome.
It makes me so happy, because I think that for people that are very visual people, and even audio people, they add a lot, because there's only so many people you can hear talking about a book, about it, or so much ad copy before you're like, eh.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was so glad when Jesselyn said she had the time to do these little mini videos for me. She's doing one for issue 2 right now, actually.
Can't wait for it. We'll totally want it for the experience. That's what we're about, is like full immersion into everything nerdy.
Awesome. That's the way to do it.
Absolutely. All right, Karla, I'm gonna let you go because I know you're super busy and you got a million things to do. I'm super thankful that you were available to come and talk with us today so that we can get all hyped about Wednesday. I wish an instant sellout for you so that you have lots of support for everything that you want to work on.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for having me on. It was great chatting with you.
Thank you so much, and we'll have you back sometime. Please keep in touch with us.
Okay, sounds good.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you in just a little bit.
All right.
All right. Welcome in, everybody. This is Talking Shop. I am Kyle, and the person sitting on that side of me is Leah McNaughten Lederman, and the person with the sucker is Maple. Hi, Maple.
Say hi.
Can I at least get a wave? She's like, nah, I'm done with the sucker. I'm over it. That's fair. So, Leah is a writer. She's been an editor. She's a owner of Fancy Glasses. I happen to know she has a dress with her face on it. Like, Leah is an interesting character. And so that's part of why I wanted to talk to her. What made you decide that you wanted to be a creative?
I don't know that I ever decided it. It was just kind of part and parcel with who I was. I'm the youngest of 7, so I have always been interested in performing and, making my brothers and sisters laugh. I was in ballet starting at, oh my gosh, she got another sucker. Where did you get that? Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. All right. Well, this is prime mom mode. I'm just bribing the kid, so that she'll be good for a little bit. Sorry.
If you run out.
Oh boy. Well, don't show it to her. She can't reach through the screen. You're just going to enrage the baby. So yeah, I was in, my first performance ever was with the Cleveland Ballet. I did the Nutcracker. I was a caroler, and I think I was 6 years old, and I got paid $10. So it was like a professional gig. And from there, I was just always in theater. And I didn't do that much with writing. I mean, I knew my writing teachers always wanted me to do more, and they liked my stories. But I kind of had this thought of like, well, I'm just naturally a creative, so I should do something that makes money and just be a creative on the side. That was kind of always my plan. I even, for a while, planned on doing medical school or physical therapy. And I came into an opportunity. Well, I don't know if that's the word. My dad is a crazy Vietnam vet, or he was. And the government said, you're so screwed up, we'll send your kids to college. So I had a bachelor's degree, which was in like nothing. It was in basket weaving. So I decided to go to grad school. And that was when I really had to face the music. And I could either get into a physical therapy program or I could pursue something with writing. And that's when I went and got my master's in literature. So it still wasn't being a creative necessarily. It was being academic. So I have been looping around, slowly coming closer to being a creative. And now it's what I do.
Right. And when I first met you, you were editing comic books.
Yeah.
So how did you get from point A of I'm an academic, I'm a lit person, we can have, a high-minded conversations about Dostoevsky to Dirk Manning? Because they're very different people.
Yeah. That was it. It was one of those, just crime of opportunity sort of things. We met through our, regular non-writing, non-editing lives. And let me think. When did that start? It was basically, I was full-time teaching. I had 6 classes and like 200 students, and he was like, hey, how about in your spare time you edit this book for me? And I had looked at a few things for him here and there, and like other people too would email me like, can you look over my resume? And it was just a favor I would do. It got a little bit more serious when he had a full-length book. It was Right or Wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I have it up there, but if I pull it out, that whole shelf will fall down.
Nobody wants to see it.
Yeah, everyone knows.
So editing comics led to editing other things, right?
Yeah. Pretty quickly. I'd been teaching for 7 years, I think, and I was about to have my second baby, and we lived out here in Indianapolis. I didn't really have a support system, and we were just looking at the finances of me continuing to teach and having this kid in daycare. I was going to be getting paid like $1 an hour after we did daycare and gas and prep time. And it just wasn't worth it. It was really difficult because I'd really always wanted to teach. That was one of the number one goals. I come from a family of teachers. But I left, and I didn't want to have the mom gap on my resume, because I just knew once you leave, you're going to be gone for 10 years. And I didn't want to disappear off the map. So I started ramping up the editing. I think I finished one of the mystery volumes. I finished about 2 weeks before I had the baby. I was like, okay, don't write anything else because I'm busy. And it kind of went from there. Once I announced I was trying to do this editing, an old friend of mine was like, oh, well, I'm writing a dissertation. And so that was one of my first editing gigs, was this dissertation. So right away, I started doing a lot more than comics. The comics was the most visible, of course.
Sure.
And it was easier in a sense. I want to make sure this is clear, because a dissertation is going to take me several weeks. A comic, a single script is just so much shorter, so much easier, and took up a little less bandwidth. So I got a lot of those under my belt in the first few years.
So what led you to anthology then? Because, we're here to talk about Cafe Macabre, and this is Cafe Macabre 2, back in the cafe, which is what I think it should have been called.
Oh, that is good. I'm sorry. I should have talked to you, Kyle, because can I just call it Cafe Macabre 2?
Right, Cafe Macabre 2, the sequel.
Yes, I agonized over it, and I think finally
Cafe Macabre 2.
Just go with it.
Horror Boogaloo. There's all kinds of titles. So Cafe Macabre 1 came about. How did that happen? Because we had that dropped just before the pandemic really turned into a thing, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. That started off, I think maybe I had the seeds of an idea for it in 2017, and worked on it in 2018. I was sitting right here. This is when, my two boys were like 4, 5, and 1. They were babies. So after everyone was in bed was when I would come downstairs and I would edit. And at that time I was really heavy on short stories. I was editing for, I think 4 separate horror authors, short stories and comics. And I'm up late at night. I'm sleep deprived, and I had a puppy, which is just dumb. And when you're editing, you're not just reading it, you're really getting deep into it. You have to arrange these words, you have to look at them backwards and forwards. So it was really all that was on my brain. And I remember going out to take the dog out, and I was terrified. It was like midnight, and I live in the middle of nowhere, just cornfields. And I remember thinking, should you look over your shoulder, or do you not want to see the thing that's hurtling towards you, about to kill you in a bloody massacre? Like, I had to weigh, do you want to see it or not? And I was like, well, I'm really frightened, because I was doing all this horror. And I thought, my goodness, what an experience. Like, in my inbox, with the actual writing and then the communication with the authors, it was this really great creative time. And the advice I was giving to one horror author was helpful to another, and something one of them would say would help me with something else. So it was really this, mental cafe. And I thought, oh my gosh, what if I have lightning in a bottle? Why don't I put all of these voices together into a book? And that was pretty much it. I asked a few people. I got a few lines on other horror authors, and then said, hey, also, add some art. And there we were. It kind of, I don't want to say it did itself, because it really didn't.
Right.
Once the ball was rolling, I was just there kind of trying to cheer people on. In the first book, I really pushed the collaborative effort. I was only 2 years out of teaching at that time. So I was like, we're going to do a peer review. I'm so sorry to those women. But it worked, and we had a lot of input on each other's pieces. And it it was really pretty cool. And during the process of that, I had another baby, and I was like, sorry, guys. And I finished writing Hardly a Scratch while I was in the hospital after having had Maple. So that is just a hormone marinated piece of literature.
And I want.
We know this has been a difficult time for you. We know you are scared. Here at Regenerist Tech, we have developed a safe and effective solution to our worldwide problem. Trust Regenerist. We give you back your life.
I want people to understand a little bit. So the Cafe Macabre 1 and 2 are primarily prose,
Yes.
with some art sprinkled in. What's interesting about these is it's all women.
Yes.
We had a signing in this store, and I felt like I needed to leave because I was chromosomally inappropriate to be there.
It was an estrogen festival.
It was a great time. I don't know if I've ever laughed that hard at a signing, but it's horror and art all done by women.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a specific decision, or was that just kind of the way it came together?
That's a really good question. It was a decision that I had to make. I was really worried. I didn't want it to come off as gimmicky. But I also, how do I say this? Was working with a lot of.
Didn't want to deal with dudes?
Yeah, a little bit.
I get that.
There was a couple things were happening. There was a really different relationship between writer and editor when I was working with women. And there was also a very different flavor to their stories. And it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't that like I didn't like working with the dudes. I've got 5 brothers. I
right.
Get dudes. It's not a problem. But it was most obvious in the book Secrets Best Kept by Stephanie Menard and Jason Chmielewski. And I hope I said that right. Anyway, they co-wrote a book of short stories together, and there was just such a contrast between the male voice and the female, and that was a part of it right there. It was like, oh, we've got something here. I want to tap into this a little bit more. I was really curious about what women feared and how they wrote about it, because I was beginning to sense that there was a difference in those things. So that's really what I was after. And chicks are, it was nice. Chicks rule. I enjoyed hanging out with women. At that point, I also had 2 boys and my husband, and even boy cats. I was like, oh, come on.
Right.
So yeah, I got the ladies in there.
Hi, Maple.
And it worked.
Can you wave at me this time?
What's that?
Can you wave at me this time? She's still like, I don't know who that is. I'm not. No. Stranger danger. But so in between, I don't know, in between, what was the order in which the things happened? So did this start almost immediately after book 1 came out? Putting this one together?
Kind of, sort of. I was at Fantasticon Toledo in 2019. So that was March or April. The Kickstarter, it was March, because the Kickstarter was about to happen, and I was, kind of a walking deck of nerves. I was really nervous.
Right.
I hadn't done anything like that, and I got to go over to Kaylin Smith's table. She did the cover for Cafe Macabre which I just love. I still look at this and just smile. I love it. And okay, you got to quit squirming. So I went over to meet her for the first time, and that was lovely, as you can imagine. And her best friend, Allison Spooner, is also a writer and was at the table with her. And Allison and I met. She gave me her card, and then she said, "Oh, are you going to do another one?" And I was like, "Oh, girl." Like, I couldn't even think about it. Like, it took a lot. I mean, I had a baby through the process of the first one. It took a long time and a lot of bandwidth. And God, there were times where you almost just wanted to give up, but you can't because you've got this train of women that you've assembled. It was hard. And someone said, "Are you going to do another one?" And I was like, "Oh, hell no." But it was really nice. I think I was like, I don't know, and I didn't think too much of it, but it was kind of in the back of my head. Like, you could, like, you did do the first one and it was successful.
Right.
And then Allison and I were working together editing. I love her writing. She's really phenomenal. And it was starting to sound pretty good to team up with her. And then Leland Musselman, she's from Muncie. I serve with her on the, yeah, I see. Hi. Sorry, Daddy's home. Leland Musselman serves with me on the board for the Midwest Writers Workshop. And I ran into her at an event, an author event. And she said, "Well, hey, can I be in on it if you do another one?" And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, she's an award-winning artist. She's a Pushcart Prize nominee. She wants to do this. And I think at that point, I sent out the email like, "So who's down for another one?" And it was like all the hands shot up. So it kind of, the second one I felt was, pandemic notwithstanding, was a lot easier to roll out. People kind of knew the routine. Okay, write your stories. Okay, we're going to pair you up with the artist. And it just went much more smoothly with it, a lot less hair pulling out from me. I kind of I knew what to expect more-ish. And I felt a lot more comfortable and confident in my role. So yeah, the second one took place kind of the end of 2019. And then we all experienced existential dread together. There were some concepts, I think, from 2020 that did leak into the book a little bit in a few of the stories. And I think that's interesting.
So I'm looking at the list, and are there, other than you and Stephanie Menard, are there any repeats in the second book from the first book?
Yes. Michelle Soft Gallagher, or Gallagher Soft, excuse me. And I have my list here because I will forget when I'm in an interview with 24 names. Amy Hunter was in the first one. She is from Galveston area, Texas. And she and I met in online fiction writing groups. And then Carrie McElroy, who wrote what I think has really become the fan favorite of the first book. She wrote the story called Steps, which was really a terrifying story about sleepwalking. I was trying to see if I could say somnambulism. I probably shouldn't have attempted it.
Yeah. But sleepwalking is terrifying.
Yeah.
In and of itself. Like, I follow a guy on TikTok who sleepwalks and Amazon shops. And that's like my biggest fear now. Because when I was in high school, I would sleepwalk and work out.
Oh wow.
I had a gym in my garage and I would sleepwalk and I would go out and I would lift asleep.
Oh, I know. It's insane. My sister's a sleepwalker, and she once woke up 100 yards from our house in a field in her nightgown.
That wouldn't freak me out nearly as much as
Lifting
what is
weight.
this package and why am I broke? Like, spent my entire life savings on something dumb on Amazon. Like,
Yeah. No, and that's a good story, a good example in that story of how she took this scary idea about sleepwalking and then she twisted it into a woman who's in a troubled relationship and how those things manifested in scary ways with the sleepwalking. So that's I get more comments about that story than any other. And every time I do, I text Carrie and I shake my fist. There's a few other artist repeats. Jennifer Barnett, who's also from Indianapolis. She's just incredible. I've been following her art for 7 years now. And then also Autumn Nicole Brown and Ashley Jagodzinski were both in the first story. So that's, about 6 maybe, out of what ended up being, I think we're at 14 now. So almost half.
With stretch goals?
With stretch goals, yeah. I think we have 13, 14. I think we I always screw. It gets really hard to keep track of how many stories.
It started off as 13s, and didn't you add one with a stretch goal?
I added one of mine, and I added an artist. So then we're at 13 writers, 14 artists. And then we added a whole new writer and a whole new artist. So we're
14 writers, 15 artists.
14 writers and 15 artists. And I think it's 16 if you count Emily Zelasco, who did the incredible cover.
Right. Emily Zelasco. Emily Zelasco is someone who, when they get discovered, is going to be huge.
I can't even explain the nerves I felt to work up to the email to ask her if she would be involved. And then like the excruciating, I think she answered pretty quickly too. Like it was the same day, but I was just trying not to refresh my screen. I was really all nerves. And when she said yes, I think I may have screamed. And then I've told her this story, but I love it so much. She was selling some of her artwork and things for Christmas, and she had a Sasquatch. And my son, who's 11, is kind of obsessed with Bigfoot and Sasquatch. So I bought it for him, and he's followed along with these books. He's actually written a couple horror short stories of his own now. So I show him the art as it comes in. And when he opens the Sasquatch gift, the artwork, he goes, "Oh, it's a Zelasco." Like he could identify. Oh, it was a very, very proud moment for me. And I made sure I told Emily right away.
Well, and there's a couple of people who, from the first book, who, when that book came out, really kind of were under the radar, who are now, really starting to strike it out on their own, with their own creator-owned and small press stuff.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Writers who have got some like full books coming out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Michelle Gallagher. Michelle Gallagher herself. She's gotten married. She was someone who was on my radar for the first one. I only knew her from Facebook, and I just knew that she just had these really profound thoughts and this way of expressing herself. And I knew she did some poetry. That's all I knew. And I said, "Hey, You want to write a horror story? And hers is, that was loud. Hers is one of my favorite stories from the first collection. And then, yeah, since that time, she's gone on. She's been in The Rejected, right? With the name's gonna fail me. I'm sorry, but she's in The Rejected, and then she got married. And this story is like the most romantic thing I've ever heard. She got married. Her husband went back home to England. So I don't know, to straighten some things out there, or it's what you do when you live in England. And then the pandemic hit, and so they were separated by the quarantine and by an ocean for a year. And during that time, they co-wrote a novel together. That in and of itself, like, that's a novel. That's something that I would want to hear more about, know more about.
That's a movie about the writing of a book. Right.
So it's like the most romantic thing I've ever heard in my life, honestly. So yeah, she's done that. She's done a couple other things in the meantime. There's and I think Allison, this is her first time in, but she's had 2 books out, and she's got more that she's working on now. So yeah, no, we're moving and grooving.
So one of the projects I also wanted to ask you about, and it's not related to anything that I know of that's ever going to come out, but you were transcribing your father's journals.
Close.
Or his writings.
Yes. Close. There's like several different projects that are going on there. So bear with me. First, I've had this idea for a book. I've had this idea for a book about my dad's experiences in Vietnam since I was still in high school, I think. And then I really started working on, I have files from like 2012, 2015, 2009. I've returned to it many times. In the last year, I have really been working in earnest. It's a memoir that I'm beginning to learn.
Someone's having fun with that.
Yes. So this book is it's turned into a memoir about my experiences growing up with a combat veteran father. And he was a really remarkable and complicated man. He died in 2015. And that's when I really turned to the book and was like, okay, I've got to do it now. He's dead. So, and then along with that book, that's the big project. That's the project that made me want to become a writer. And along with that, my father also preached the gospel and raised churches, and it was a really, really well-known speaker. He was known for just being, he was a Greek scholar, and so he would go in and translate these words. He did Greek manuscripts of the New Testament. So he's got all these messages on CD, and I went through and I transcribed all of them, which that can be a book in and of itself for the ministry he was a part of, hopefully. And it gave me a ton of material, because all the time what he did was pull from his life experience and talk about this new lens that he was looking at it through. So there's a lot of great Vietnam stories in there that I'm plucking out. And then in addition to that, I have journaled almost daily since I was about 11 years old. So I've been going through, and I'm not transcribing those, but I am indexing them for easier access and story fodder. I've got actually a whole idea for a novel now that's all outlined based on some of these adventures. So I'm doing this thing where I'm just working, but it's like there's not going to be a lot of show for a lot of this work for another several years.
Right.
But this is that deep foundational work that I'm doing.
Well, and that's the thing that's interesting about talking to, not to say that comic writers aren't writers.
Sure.
I don't want to say that.
No, I agree. Right.
But book writers and authors, as it were, people who write actual books. And again, I'm gonna have to edit the crap out of this now. That's the thing that's interesting to me about talking with prose writers and people who don't have the visual storytelling aspect that comic books and graphic novels have.
Yeah.
Is the research is insane.
Yeah.
And then the amount of time you spend studying your subject, even if you are the subject, to then write about the subject is a job in and of itself.
I think that comic writers do that same level of research and self-research. I know of several artists I've worked with. Howie Knoll comes to mind. He did the graphic novel Float, which is about his experience with anxiety. And, you know, that was something that he'd been working on. He had snippets of it that were 10 years old and more. So I know what you're saying, though, is that it's a different kind of process, the way it goes onto the page. It's kind of like screenwriting in some ways. You know, the comic writer is just writing that script, and then the artist comes in and fills in a lot of what the prose writer is going to put into paragraphs. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, I mean, I guess what I was kind of angling at is that you have to, as the writer, you have to live it a little bit more, I think. Writing prose or writing, more wordy type books, word driven books, you have to live it a little bit more maybe than picture it a little bit more, with a traditional graphic novel. But
there's something there.
This is all going somewhere.
Okay.
And it's the horror part of it. You described, kind of having this feeling of taking the dog out and feeling, not wanting to turn around and feel some, because you felt something watching you or whatever behind you. And it was probably just like an owl.
It was nothing. It was just my imagination. Yeah.
Right. Or, it was a bird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, nothing that would ever terrify you, but the brain does that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So what are the differences in your experience between writing horror and now trying to write this memoir type, starting to work on this memoir kind of thing? How do you approach it differently?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. Let me kind of put this together for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I can say with the memoir, there is a lot of self-work involved in terms of, like, I have to be honest. I don't have to tell everyone everything, but if I don't tell the truth, readers will know. And that means having to face certain truths myself. That's that takes a lot of peeling back layers. Also, in writing memoir, I really have the sense of I'm not following an outline. I'm not trying to get to any particular destination. My goal in writing this is purely discovery. And if I'm being honest, and if I'm really in the right track, then that's where I hit these discovery moments where I go, oh my gosh. It started off, it was supposed to be a book about my dad and his experiences. And it has morphed into, this is a story about my experience growing up with my dad. And I mean, it's a slight change, but it's changed everything in terms of how I approach it. So it's much more in my own skin. There's a lot more vulnerability involved, because I can't say, oh, that didn't happen. Well, no, it did. Whereas in fiction, I'm taking some things that are just as near and dear and personal to me, but I'm here and this is my wall and I am building this story on the other side of the moat. And that's the story that I wrote for Cafe Macabre 2 is called New Beginnings. And it is very much a manifestation of 2020 and the things that we went through in this household, with, we all suffered our own ways, right, during the pandemic. I did not lose anyone. I did not lose my job or my husband's job. We were stable in that aspect. But there was some issues with mental health in one of my family members. And this story that I wrote was a way for me to manifest the pain and anxiety and anger, all of it. I could put into that fiction story, and it was like, okay, there you go. And it felt lighter to write because I didn't have the whole magnitude of everything weighing down on me while I did it. It was like, oh, I'm writing this down so I can send it off. It wasn't digging down deep so much. Does that make sense?
It does. It really does.
Okay.
as someone You know, as someone who likes to think of themselves as someone who can write but doesn't, I spend most of my time writing ad copy and
Yeah.
you know, bump liners for commercials and things.
Mhm.
I'm always fascinated by people who write anything and how they approach it,
Mhm.
because so much of the writing I get to do is, all right, well, I got to sell this thing. How do I do that? You know, it's a different type of thing.
Yeah.
So the creative process is interesting to me. Now, I'm going to ask maybe out of left field question, but you kind of mentioned that your oldest son has written a couple of horror stories on his own.
Yeah.
And I know we have parents and people out there who will watch and who will be interested in this. What are some of the things you're doing as a creative person to foster that in your kids?
It's that I'll just respond with a cliche. It's do as I do, not as I say. And I really took that to heart. What do my children see me doing? Am I on my phone all the time? Am I on this or that? So when I really committed to, okay, I'm really going to do this writing thing. I'm even peeling away from editing a little bit. It was, I think, 2018 when I was like, nope, I'm a writer. That's my goal. I stopped watching TV. I turned off the Netflix. That's just on account of who I am as a person. Here and there, I'll let myself binge a show or what have you, but I just had to cut that out because I realized it was getting in the way of what I needed to do. When I was on my phone, it wasn't, here and there, of course, you get some mindless scrolling in, but generally I was emailing a client or I was working on something, yada, yada. And I would tell them that. I would say, hang on one second. I have to finish this email I'm writing to an author. And I would just tell them what I was doing so that, at least why mommy's excluding you or ignoring you. But it wasn't like this mindless, I'm busy, I'm over here at my computer. It was, here, this is what I'm doing. Hey, check out the sentence I just wrote. Or what do you think a good word for this would be? So I was just always in conversation with them about it. My sister has 5 children, and I've always taken her advice for a lot of things with parenting. And she's just said, if you want your kids to read, they have to see you reading. So I would always be reading. I run a reading group on Facebook, and I am usually reading at least 4 books at a time. It's kind of a profession at this time. That's not even including the book I'm editing at the time. So I want my kids to see me reading. And at the end of the day, as I've been looking back on my parents and my upbringing, the things that I've carried with me into adulthood are the examples my parents set. And that was, they were always reading, they were always creating, they were working. So that's what I've done, is I've kind of included my kids in the process. Just talking about what I'm doing, showing them things like when Cathy Macabre was rolling out and I got new artwork, I would show it to him. And I was flabbergasted when he came home from school one day and was like, oh yeah, hey, me and my friends want to write a short story collection too. And I was kind of like, all right, you put 5 together and I'll put it in a book for you. So, and then he was really, I'm laughing now, I'm making this connection. It was in my Facebook memories today. This time, I think 2 years ago was the first time I ever had to EpiPen him, and he was in the emergency room and he was like, Mom, get my Chromebook. I want to write. And I think you realize hospitals are very boring places. So, here I am, I just had a baby and I'm writing a story. And then a couple of years later, Riley is in the emergency room, he's writing a story. So this is just, I just try to lead by example. And I try to be encouraging so that he doesn't have the crippling voice of self-doubt in his way.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Is my mom is a literacy professional, I guess is the title she would have. She works in schools promoting literacy. Like, she runs several literacy programs.
Okay. Right.
And I am a person who you wouldn't think by looking at me in high school would have been a bookworm, but I read everything, and I still read hours and hours a day. And then I bought a bookstore. Like, you think the apple and the tree are pretty close together here, and it's really funny is I've been getting texts while I've been having this interview. I spent maybe too much money on a 6-month-old nephew on books for a child who can't read.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting, that just bring your kids along is kind of what my mom did. It was, she was a reader, and reading was important to her. And my first job was in a library. Like,
I mean, there was the whole idea of like, we made this choice. I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to work at home, but I'm going to be with the kids, so that even if I'm editing in the morning and I'm not really paying attention to them, I'm still available. I am a warm body available to them. So I don't really get hung up in the guilt. I don't get hung up in the, they grew up too fast, you're going to miss it all. Cause I feel like, nope, I'm spending every moment here in it with them. And even while I'm writing, even while I'm editing, my kids can tell you, or, they've always heard like one more sentence, one more chapter. And now that's what my 5-year-old will say to me. He'll go, Mom, when you're done with that chapter, can you get me some cereal? Like, they just know this is part of the punctuation of our lives. And it did, tracking back to earlier in the conversation when I mentioned that there was this money from my dad being nuts from the war. And I had to ask myself, like, do I want to do something that's going to make money, or do I want to do something that's more in alignment? And one of the things I did was I looked at my house. I thought, your house is filled with books. How can you not follow what you need to do? And it was one of those decisions, like, I look back on, like, that could have been a lot different, but I'm really, really glad with where I ended up.
Yeah. Absolutely. So a couple of minutes left here. Kickstarter.com, search Cafe Macabre 2. If you search Cafe Macabre, they both come up, but only one of them is active.
Yes.
And you're 200% funded at last check. Let me refresh because I've got it right here in front of me.
Yeah, me too. 119 backers, $5,004. And that's happened. I haven't even posted since we hit the stretch goal. That's happened just in the minutes before we started here. So I don't know what to do. It's noon, or it's afternoon. Maybe I could have a shot. I don't.
Well, you got to celebrate a little bit. But it's, guys, if you're out there watching and you're going, why is Kyle interviewing this person about this book? It's not a comic book. There's a comic book thing. No. You're missing the point of all of it. It's all tied together. It's one big happy family where we put words on paper. So the other thing is that good books are good books. Buy the good books when they're on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
So, back everybody, head over to Cafe Macabre on Kickstarter, and back this project, because I want to see the posts from Leah in the coming days about, I don't know what to do. I'm out of ideas for,
I didn't think it was going to go this far.
Right. I don't know what to do for more backer goals and more stretch goals. What do I do? Well,
yeah, you'll see them. I'll try to come up with something good.
This would make me endlessly happy if this, if we could double this number that we're already at and watch Leah's head explode. Because she is one of my favorite people in the industry. So let me.
We know this has been a difficult time for you. We know you are scared. Here at Regenerist Tech, we have developed a safe and effective solution to our worldwide problem. Trust Regenerist. We give you back your life.
me ask you some questions you can't possibly be prepared for.
Okay.
If you could work with any creative in pop culture, who would it be?
Oh goodness. Hang on. It came in and it left. Was that one? Was that one? Probably David Sedaris. He's
Okay.
He's kind of my idol, and his sister's in a lot of movies. She was in The Mandalorian.
Well, David Sedaris he's been in TV shows. He's done a lot of stuff. He's hysterical.
Oh, he's amazing. That's like life goals, you know. So I don't know if I would say I'd want to work with him. I would just want to follow him around for a day.
Right.
I had tickets to go see him right when the pandemic hit. And that was like, you know, we all had our losses and our hits, but that was the one that was like, oh.
Right.
I dream about
what
it.
I want David Sedaris's work performed on stage by Leslie Jordan.
Now that's very interesting.
I think it'd be awesome.
Steve Martin. Steve Martin. Yeah, he's like just a major idol, writing wise. Or Tina Fey. I like the writers. You know, this makes sense.
Is there a project in pop culture, an IP in pop culture that you would say, if I had the chance to work on it, I would drop everything to do it?
Am I allowed to say no?
Yes.
I don't want to.
A lot of people say no, because a lot of people want to just work on. I'm
trying to work on.
They just want to do their own projects, right?
It's if there was something though, I would tell you this, like, because one thing that did interrupt my work yesterday was that Brevity magazine it has an announcement that they're accepting short essays, and I was like, okay, I have to stop everything I'm doing and write this short essay for Brevity right now.
Right.
So that's about all I could really tell you.
Yeah, I get that answer a lot. No, or I just got done working for somebody for 25 years. I want to make my own things. You know, I totally get it.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite Pokemon?
They're around my house.
Yeah.
Here's one. I think this is Pikachu.
Yep.
Okay, and there's another Pikachu over there that's bigger that they call Mommy Pikachu. I've got one that's crocheted by my sister. That's out of my wheelhouse.
Whichever ones the kids are most excited about that week.
Yeah, and I don't know. That's one of those, like, they're talking about it, and I'm like, I don't understand what you're telling me right now. I mean, I smile, I try to pay attention, but
Sure.
Yeah.
If you could have the ultimate nerd garage, and I kind of, when I talk to horror writers, I kind of know where their brain goes with this one, but you could put one car and one spaceship from all of pop culture in your garage. What would you put in it?
One car and one spaceship. Oh. Well, I mean, the spaceship obviously is the Millennium Falcon. Like, and it has to come with Han Solo.
No.
From 1978. And that's weird. A car? I don't know. Am I allowed to be like, I really like my Jeep?
No.
Not another car.
Right. My answer is always, it's Christine. Stephen King's Christine. Because then I can just sleep in the back seat and it takes care of all my problems.
I like that. Yeah.
And I always joke that it's the Slave One because I have a small garage and it stores flat.
I did think about how big the garage had to be when I said millennium.
Oh. Well, I always make that joke. But it's, the car is the one that I always pick. And I like Christine because that's kind of, Stephen King is kind of my inroad into horror it was R.L. Stine and then it was Stephen King for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I just finished The Dark Tower last year, and I did the thing where I looked out the window like I was Princess Buttercup. was like, I will never read again because it took me like 2 weeks to get over the heartbreak of having finished that series. But yeah, car wise, I don't, my father-in-law owns like Ferraris and Porsches, and he wants me to drive them, and I said it's no.
There are no pop culture cars. I mean, I guess
I just don't know cars. I Kit. Yeah, there's Kit. My first thought was the DeLorean. But I don't like that it runs on garbage. I mean, it's probably like eco-friendly, but it stinks.
Yeah. I just keep waiting for somebody to say Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or something completely out of left field.
I was thinking like Herbie or something. Yeah, like one of
No. So, okay. Where can people find you on the socials? Where can they get updates? Where can they do the things and support you?
That they need to do. Yeah. My number one hub is Facebook, and that's facebook.com Lederman Editing, and that's Lederman Editing. That's usually where I'm hanging out, but I'm also on Instagram at Leah McPhia, and Twitter I'm trying to get better at, but it's a crazy land that frightens me, and that's at Leah Lederman. I also have a website that's leahlederman.wordpress.com. I need to get on making my own domain name. Other things I have to do, but I've also found like really my son occasionally Googles me. And I find all these random pictures of me from cons in the last 5 years or so. So yeah, come find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, my website.
And then once yeah. And then once again, do you have a vanity URL for your Kickstarter, or is it just go to Kickstarter and search Cafe Macabre 2?
But this is an embarrassing story because I was working on it very late at night, and I had strep throat. And I thought that I was going to be able to preview it so I could send it to the Cafe Macabre team and have them look at it for me, and I launched the project. It's about the dumbest thing I've ever done, and very publicly. I can't take it down. So if you do go to Kickstarter and you search for Cafe Macabre 2, don't panic when you find one that says cancel, because I also panicked and said, oh my gosh, abort. And I started throwing things. That was embarrassing. But so it's the one that's running.
And it has how many days left? 21 days left to go?
21 days, yes.
We're up to 120 backers.
What?
Someone else is backed since we started.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, hey, it was me.
Oh my goodness. How did you
wait, what?
Can you so you can pat your head and rub your belly at the same time is what you're telling me. I'm impressed.
There's a town that lies nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains in the great American state of Pennsylvania. The name of the town is White Ash. With a town charter dating back to 1714, it's one of the oldest towns in the country. And as you can tell from how hard those smokestacks are puffing, it's also one of the coldest. Thankfully, the people of White Ash have a secret that's dark and buried deep. A secret to keeping warm, bituminous coal. From bituminous coal as a product ingredient comes heat, power, transportation, and necessities and luxuries almost beyond count. And where, you might ask, does all that coal come from? The answer is places like Alden Mountain and towns just like White Ash, where it's dug from the mountains by the hardest working men in America, our coal miners. But while an industry supports the town supports the industry. Here are two of White Ash's finest young entrepreneurs, Catlin and Kyle, owners of the Double K gas station. Coming or going, they'll get you there. But a town can't be all work and no play. Hello, Alec. Hello, Lillian. Where are you two kids going? Why, they're going to SIF's. Don't let its Nordic theme fool you. The most popular place in every American town is the local diner, and SIF's is no exception. Home to the world-famous Stack Attack, SIF's have been filling the bellies of White Ashians since 1895. Yes, White Ash, founded by men who came from the four corners of the earth, bringing with them innovation, can-do spirit, and dark, dark secrets.
Hi, I'm Robert Vendetti, professional comic book writer, and I want you to know about the new Bad Idea comic book series, Tankers. As the world well knows, I'm what's called a method writer. That means before I begin a project, I don't just study the material, So to take a deep dive into the subject, I came to the one place on Earth where I can operate mechanized combat equipment, dig for oil, and shoot dinosaurs. XT, baby! I'm down to the tank! No oil yet? Every second of my immersive research experience guarantees that Tankers is unlike anything you've read from me before. I should know. I've read everything I've ever written. Tankers is about a crack team of mercenaries and mech suits who work for Greenleaf Oil. They get sent back in time to divert the comet that killed the dinosaurs. More dinosaurs in the past means more oil in the present. Who doesn't love that? And with a superstar art team providing breathtaking covers and interiors, Tankers is an action-fueled thrill ride of human versus dinosaur warfare that we can't wait for you to read. So go ahead, order Tankers today. I guarantee I'll be glad you did. As for me, I'll be finishing off these dinosaurs. Extinction Day.